What's up, Homegoings homies? Myra here, and a quick note before we start the show to say that if you can believe it, we are already putting the finishing touches on Homegoings Season 2. I know, I'm amazed at how quickly this season has flown by. It feels like just yesterday we were in Mexico talking about aging, or breaking down the music industry with rock stars like Madame Gandhi, or unpacking the conundrum of being biracial. Oh, we have had a time, and guess what? We're not done yet. We're so thankful to you, our dedicated listeners, for joining us on this wild ride of soulful storytelling that we're going to throw a party about it. On Friday, October 11th at 6 p.m., I'll be hosting a live taping of the show featuring a conversation with Marjani Forte-Saunders. Marjani is an award-winning choreographer and dancer who seeks to reclaim freedom for Black and brown bodies through movement.
Pulling on this rich, tapestry of information and lineage that is old as dirt.
Marjani will also perform a composition for us, and might I say, we are all in for a treat. So come on out and join us. Friday, October 11th at the Vermont Public Studios in Colchester. Doors open at 5:30 and the live taping starts at 6. After the taping, I'm gonna DJ while we share some soul food together and close out the night in community. We're asking for a $10 donation to help cover the cost of the evening. And remember, seating is super limited. So head over to vermontpublic.org/events to reserve your spot right now. Like, right now, homie. Right now. We look forward to seeing you. As always, you are welcome here. What's up, homies? Myra Flynn here. You know me by now. And if you can believe it, which I can't, we are winding down to our final 2 episodes of Season 2 of Homegoings. I thought a lot about how to end this season with the same intention it started with, and that's kind of when it came to me. The number one question we get here on Homegoings: how did the show get its start?
I'm not quite sure when you started in Homegoings, but I am curious about how you came to it.
Homegoings, as you know it now, is a podcast, a television series, a live event space, and really, truly so much more if you factor in socials and newsletters and radio broadcast. Oh my. But it started as a mini-series on another show called Brave Little State during a really, really trying time for me and Black people everywhere. From Vermont Public Radio, I'm Myra Flynn, and today is the 1-year anniversary of George Floyd's murder. This was May 25th, 2021, and it was a sad year, and a frustrating one, because the date not only reminded us all of his horrific public murder, it also reminded us of what we had done collectively to ensure that this never happened again, and all we hadn't done. This is some of my narration from our very first episode. A sad reality is that his murder was not exceptional, and also a leading cause of Black American deaths is homicide. In the newsroom, at Vermont Public, and on the podcast Brave Little State, we were grappling with our own anti-racist efforts. I know this won't come as a shock, but the world of public media is pretty white. So in my mind, as one of the few Black reporters in the newsroom, I didn't want to touch this thing called racism, unless we were really going to touch it. And if we were going to do that, we were going to have to face the overwhelming death in the room. And the grief that had become as much a part of the Black existence as, well, breathing air. So, I've been thinking a lot about how people die, because how people die in a community shapes how people grieve. How do you talk about Black death in media in a way that doesn't just focus on the tragedy of the moment, but in a way that is consistent and intentional? How do you talk about Black people as people instead of headlines and statistics? How do you memorialize and humanize Black grief, joy, healing, mourning, without perpetuating trauma? It took a while, but I think eventually we got there. The answer was what it's always been, historically. The answer was art. And once we figured out that the symbiosis between Black grief and art was as old as time, the miniseries began its quest to answer one nuanced question. When so much Black art is born from loss and pain, does grief have a sound? And if so, do we have to consider that some of our favorite Black music is actually the sound of musicians grieving radically? Does grief have a sound? This is how Homegoings was born. From Vermont Public, this is Homegoings. I'm Myra Flynn. Today on the show, we're looking back at how it all began with a handful of the OG Black Vermont artists who helped Homegoings get its start on the podcast Brave Little State. Artists like Bobby Hackney Jr. of the punk rock band Rough Francis.
For some reason, I was always drawn to more aggressive music. Like there was something about the energy and just like the directness of punk rock music that spoke to me.
Ravon Calderon, an Afro-Cuban MC.
It is a bit challenging being a hip-hop artist in Vermont, especially a person of color for that matter, just because a lot of the music people I work with on a day-to-day basis are white people, just because that's what Vermont has to offer. It's a majority-white state.
And 3 Black teenagers who used a high school musical as a way to get folks to listen up.
Like, how else am I supposed to imagine anything different from my future than by laying out what I expect and what I need and what I'm demanding right now?
This is Homegoings, and this is an episode where we're asking, does grief have a sound? We're a proud member of the NPR network. Welcome home.
On To the Best of Our Knowledge, we're curious about everything.
I found a post from a gentleman named John who said, I just found out that my great-great-grandfather had a Black son.
Did you know that the G's came from France?
Really? Wait a minute, this is my grandfather's grandfather. That's how the discussion began.
To the Best of Our Knowledge, the show that makes your world bigger. Join us. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts.
Us being a tribute band to our father and uncle's band. And then we use that as a springboard to, do our own thing.
Bobby Hackney Jr. is 1/3 of the band Rough Francis.
Well, Rough Francis is a brother band. So it's me, my brother Urian, and my other brother Julian.
Black musicians are often associated with the sound of founding musical genres like R&B, hip-hop, and reggae. However, the Hackney brothers all but decimate that stereotype. Rough Francis is pure punk rock.
I got into punk rock through my skater friends, and I started going to 242, and that kind of changed my whole world.
242 Main was an all-ages punk venue in Burlington.
And I became, part of the Burlington, Vermont punk scene and started playing in punk bands and hardcore bands when I was a teenager.
And for Bobby, music is quite literally in his blood. Bobby's father and uncles were also in a super successful band in the 70s. A fun fact he never even knew about until he was an adult.
And then, as I got a little older and started to have children of my own, me and my brothers discovered that our father and uncles were in this other band that started in Detroit in the 70s called Death. Bring it out, 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 bring it out. That was just like a big family surprise that, that just like hit us out of nowhere. And it was like this big...
I was floored by this nearly inherited coincidence. Can you imagine learning later in life that your dad and uncles were also players in a super niche all-black punk rock brother band? Mind blown.
It was like this big It's actually a secret. Our dad didn't really tell us anything about it until we found out ourselves. And then we confronted him and he told us the whole story. And then it kind of unfolded into this thing.
This thing became kind of a big deal. Bobby and his brothers continued to play locally, but covering the music of death in tribute to their father and uncles. Before they knew it, they had a pretty sweet buzz brewing in Vermont and beyond. Media outlets like the New York Times began to reach out and even released a story on the family band, who spun their secret into stardom.
That was pretty much the start of Rough Francis, was, us being a tribute band to our father and uncle's band. And then we used that as a springboard to, do our own thing. And here we are now. I know it's a long story. It's always a long story.
Something I've always loved about the genre punk rock is that it is both a sound and an adjective. Like, that is so punk rock. To me, the phrase punk rock, it's synonymous with something radical. To be radical in joy, rage, and sadness is pretty punk rock. And it brings up some other thoughts about this specific Black grief I talked about earlier. When so much Black art is born from loss and pain, does grief have a sound? And if so, do we have to consider that some of our favorite Black music is actually the sound of musicians grieving radically?
For some reason, ever since I was little, I was always drawn to more aggressive music. Like, there was something about the energy and just like the directness of punk rock music that spoke to me. And I remember, actually, this was like a very pivotal moment. When I was in 8th grade, I remember seeing the Rodney King beating. And that really had a huge impact on my perspective on American racism. That was like the first time I got to see firsthand what it looks like. That's the product of it right there. With this song, Tito's Revenge, it's pretty much just thinking back on how long, we've just been held down and held back for so long. And I'm talking about mainly Black Americans. And at some point, there's a breaking point. And those breaking points, just kind of, they lead to change. And, all the people that came before us, they had to be the pioneers. They had to be the first ones to do this or do that, and it's still happening today, where to be heard, we have to fight extra hard and extra long to just to come to the table sometimes.
That fight Bobby talks about here is nearly palpable in Tito's Revenge. It shows up in the cacophony of electric guitars, hard-hitting drums, and what's called a growl in this genre, better known as scream singing.
So the song is just about recognizing that struggle, but also saying that we will get there. It might take us extra long. It might, when, we're trying to be heard or trying to just do the things that everybody else can do, we will get there. And most of the time it's not too pretty, but when it does happen, it's a very joyous moment, and we move on to the next thing. But I don't know, it's just about that constant struggle that we face.
You may have noticed that Bobby says, often. And sadly, I do know. I'll admit, many tears were shed while creating this episode. And as our series continues, I'll expect many more will come. And Bobby agrees that this constant cycle of loss and grieving and strength and upholding can be pretty exhausting.
It is, yeah, very exhausting.
But there is a healing in unpacking our grief together. As it turns out, community is pretty punk rock. Now, let's listen to Tito's Revenge.
Just turn it up really loud. If you're wearing headphones, don't turn it up too loud. But if you're not wearing headphones, turn it up really loud. That's my only recommendation.
What I have to offer to the world is my music. Like, that's my home, and I want to open it up to anyone who wants to come inside and welcome themselves.
Ravon Calderon is 20, but he dropped all sorts of musical knowledge on me during this interview, and that's because he knows his stuff. As a multiracial Afro-Cuban Caucasian hip-hop artist born and raised in Vermont, he has his work cut out for him. He says he had to intentionally seek out his craft. Hip-hop isn't just growing on maple trees.
It's interesting because I make hip-hop music, which is something very rare to Vermont. So I'm always watching other people's stories and sort of just using it as motivation for myself. But it is a bit challenging being a hip-hop artist in Vermont, especially a person of color for that matter, just because a lot of the music people I work with on a day-to-day basis are white people, just because that's what Vermont has to offer. It's a majority white state.
Ravon notes that he knows plenty of Vermonters who like hip-hop, but he worries with lyrics about Black Panther history, riots, and slavery, are people getting it?
I have tons of friends that are in folk bands and, tons of friends that make jazz music, and I really like all that type of music, but some of the content that I try and talk about isn't really other people's interests in this area.
This area, Vermont, which is super rural and white, is often viewed as a really welcoming place. But it does not reflect the surroundings from which hip-hop and urban movement was born. So, I had to ask Ravon, in a state that does not have a deeply rooted cultural context for this specific genre of music, is hip-hop really welcome here?
How do you think hip-hop hits Vermonters? Do you think it's valued and appreciated as an art form, as a genre in general?
I want to say yes, but honestly, I have to say no to some extent. I mean, Burlington, Vermont is a college town. Like, a majority of my audience that I'm trying to sell my art to are college students, which is a pretty stupid population of people to try and market to. Like, I mean, I can only confidently say that because I myself am a college student. So I know lots of people that love hip hop, but it doesn't really hit them the same way that I'm sure people in other cities are impacted by hip hop. I don't know. I think college students, like, they're here to have a fun time, which is completely understandable.
Fun. Oh yeah, that thing. Dude, that's the story right there, because not only do Black lives matter, but Black joy, Black leisure, and Black fun matters equally. So if you want me to feature a song by you where you are simply having fun, I'll do that, happily. But Ravon sent me his song of choice, very aptly titled Mayday to Pilot, off the 2020 EP I Got the Juice. Ravon Calderon wrote and emceed the record. Like Ravon, I know my way around a recording studio or 20, so it was fun for us to almost commiserate around creating art during a time where there is a built-in expectation for artists to use their platforms for social change. Like, what happened to just making music, man? And that led to a strange conversation about cake and vegetables. Stick with me. I promise it will make sense soon.
I had one producer like yank me away and be like, I need you to stop shoving your intelligence down my throat.
Yeah.
In your lyrics. Like, I need a break. And I get it. People need a break. But I also think, personally, you do a really great job of doing what I call slipping in the vegetables with the cake.
Yeah.
Like, you're definitely giving folks the message that they need to hear subtly.
Slipping in the vegetables. I like that. I think that I've been able to successfully both entertain and then also remain conscious within my lyrics, which is something that I've had to work very hard for.
And why can't consciousness be fun? Does it always have to be such hard work? Or, as Ravon suspects, do we still just have too far to go?
I'd like to be positive and think that everything is going to be okay for people of color. I'm sure white people all over the country, like, were yippieing and drinking with joy when Chauvin was guilty, like, and oh, we did it, like George Floyd, we got his justice. But I mean, it's hard for me to not look at it as like, okay, we wrapped that one up, and then Dante Wright literally is just the next George Floyd, and that happened literally moments after. Like, one chapter closes and then the other begins.
But Ravon says almost in spite of the atrocities surrounding him, he still makes music.
I can't live my life with dread and fearing the future of what will happen for people of color. You know, you don't have to fear it. You just have to be knowledgeable of it. So when it comes, we're able to deal with it. But in the meantime, we have to live our lives just how any normal, happy white person would.
Ravon and I said goodbye, but not before he set up our listening session for his music in a sweet and savory way.
This is the perfect the veggie cake mix, you know, that you're talking about. It's like a delicious slice of cake, but it's a carrot cake. You know, there's tons of carrots jam-packed in there.
Let's listen to Mayday to Pilot by Ravon Calderon. And while you do, try to have some fun.
Come on, Bishop, man, let's get out all this. Man, we can end it right here. It's me and you, Q and Bishop. You ain't gotta play on no front for me, man. No. I ain't got to do nothing. You pass, bro. My time is now. You ready to die, bro?
It's the half-blind pilot, violet turning violet, a ticking time bomb with the middle name Tyrant. Powerful impact, boom goes the cannon. 1,000-foot fall, but I stick the landing. I'm the Black Panther. Moses a Black Panther. Fist up flex, that's a Malcolm X stanza. Light skin Danny Phantom, this the anthem. Ghost in all your blue things, no Luigi's Mansion. Floating off my shoelace, kid and play stand up. Just got the new fade. He be hella handsome. Rapping like my hoop game, 3-point and one step back, shoot flame, banging like a handgun back. Who here's gonna start a riot? And who here's gonna stay quiet? Mayday to pilot. I'm not gonna crash in the crowd, but I might just clash with the sound like, what you mean? Do what you heard. Sit down and listen, and then you can learn. It's wisdom I got, it flows through my veins. It's been in my blood since my people's been chained. Shackled and tamed, whipped and renamed. History written on every page. Cuffed in the cage. What'd you say? 400 years and nothing done changed. That's why I'm bringing the back, That's why I'm spitting on trash, I'm ripping the wax. That's why I'm bringing the bag, That's why I'm spitting the facts and swinging my axe. more work and no play. Makes me a dope boy. If you want a response from your song, you need the soul boy. If you want to rebel, you need to preach to the choir. Speak to the masses.
When we come back, I feel lucky enough to speak with not one, but 3 young, brave Black Vermont youth. They're not professional artists yet. In fact, they're still in high school, but they are doing what all teenagers do, testing out participating in the arts as a form of self-expression. That's right after this.
You want me to sing and dance like I'm a Sambo? You want me to rap about sipping lean and whipping Lambos? You want me to be black and beautiful?
Homegoings has support from Rutland Regional Medical Center, rooted in the commitment to equitable and inclusive healthcare access for all patients. Learn more at rrmc.org.
Homegoings has support from the Vermont Arts Council, working to center creativity, art, and culture for everyone throughout Vermont. Learn more about programs, resources, and grant opportunities at vermontartscouncil.org.
Listen up.
Listen up. Listen up.
I met Naomi, Faith, and Dawn through something called the Listen Up Project. It's an original musical based on interviews with hundreds of teenagers across Vermont. We'll hear more on that later. And full disclosure, I was somewhat of a musical mentor on the project. I helped them write a couple songs.
I'm Generation 1.5, been straddling this great divide. No one really knows how to describe me, so I struggle with how to define me. I'm Generation 1.
But the one we'll hear later, the title song, Listen Up, they wrote that one themselves. It turns out they don't need any help speaking up about racial injustice.
As much as I love it here, I do describe it as surviving, and that's
Faith Awoto. Faith is from Essex. And as you'll hear today, she and the rest of the group are just so insightful. You have to remind yourself that they are young. Faith is 18.
And that isn't always pretty, and that isn't always joy and pride. A lot of it is the parts that I have to suppress.
To hell with respectability, I'm not here for you, but for prosperity. To bask in this black, miraculous and holy, it's magic, fantastic, bear witness to me, cause this is my reckoning, my body is defining.
What I would hope for all Black youth right now is happening for Faith. As in, she doesn't know what she wants to do next. Maybe be an artist in Burlington. She says it's still up in the air. Yes, freedom.
Okay, first we need to believe on what we are doing.
Don Kiputa lives in Winooski, and he's 19. He's originally from Zambia and came to Vermont in March 2020.
I know I wasn't born here, but I equally deserve to be treated like anyone else. Being Black is not my fault, and will never be my fault. Therefore, treat me like I'm your own.
Don used to be painfully shy, and now he says he wants to be an advocate for underrepresented people here in Vermont, and that the Listen Up Project gave him the confidence to express his views without fearing anyone.
Since we are here, we are simply raising our voice in order for people to hear us.
Who says art doesn't change the world? And lastly, this is Naomi Fitzpatrick. She's 14.
So I don't have a lot of experience being in Vermont, but since I've been here, family's been pretty helpful. It's just nice to know that you're not alone.
Naomi lived in Boston until age 7, then spent 5 years in Burkina Faso, and now she's in Dorset, Vermont. She says it's all right here, especially once a year.
People here have been accepting, especially it's the start of Black History Month, so people at my school have been trying to be extra nice to me because, I'm Black.
You tell me who I am, but how would you know? Following a custom started centuries ago. I'm shouting to be heard. It's like I never said a word. I'm done living like this. I know your vision is obscured.
But Naomi also says ain't nobody got time for insincerity.
Don't be nice to me for 1 month of the year. That's not how it works.
Back in 2019, Kingdom County Productions, which is based in the Northeast Kingdom, began conducting interviews with teenagers all over Vermont. Ultimately, more than 800 teens participated in the project, and the result was a musical, written and performed by these brave high schoolers. They even toured the project in the summer of 2021. The Listen Up project does tackle racism, but it also boldly attempts to tackle all teen issues happening today. And I can safely say, as a child of the 90s, that those issues, the ones that come with high school, they look different these days. There's still puberty, cliques, and breakups, but they now walk shoulder to shoulder with a climate crisis, social media, and a pandemic. It is tough to be young right now. It was hard to even come up with appropriate questions for this interview. How can you ask anyone to reflect on trauma when they're currently in the thick of it? So, I put this question to my public Facebook page. I asked, what do you, the people, want to know about being young and Black and New American in Vermont in 2022? Lucky for me, you came through. From Farine Paris Meyer of Burlington, she says, this is not your job, yet you show up 100% invested, doing the courageous shit. What keeps you going as Black Vermont youth? Anyone want to take that one? Eventually, Naomi Fitzpatrick did. She's the 14-year-old.
I feel like, I don't know, there's something inside of you that just says that you can get out there and you can make it happen. I feel like it's the history that's just kind of, it's so strong.
But Faith adds,
I feel like I need to call light to the fact that it is hard to so often be expected to be kind of this, like, that figure or a teacher or whatever it is. And so many days I want to be like, no, I don't owe that to anyone because I don't, and it shouldn't be expected of me. But more often than not, like, my answer is simply that I have to. Like how else am I supposed to imagine anything different from my future than by laying out what I expect and what I need and what I'm demanding right now?
Mike George from Roxbury wants to know, do you feel safe? Here's Faith.
I don't want to say no, but I think I have to. It's layered, and it doesn't always look like someone following you or yelling slurs at you on the street, but, like, that happens. It's happened to me, and I watch it happen, and you walk away. What actually hurts so much more is when it's my friends, when it's someone I trust, someone I'm intimate with who just says the wrong thing or doesn't think about the implications of what they're doing. And then it's moments like that where I realize I feel safe until I have to remember I'm Black. And then it's all just, like, gone.
I'm a mom. I have this little Black daughter. And the thought that one day she might be 18 and say out loud that she sometimes feels safe until she remembers that she's Black is more than heartbreaking. It's unacceptable. And Faith, who lives up to her name, doesn't accept it either, almost in spite of this lack of safety. She has faith in an anti-racist society, but it's gonna cost.
I think that it's very trendy and rewarding to be anti-racist, but it's not, like, problematic at all to be racist, and, like, that's an issue, right? And so when I say make it expensive, make it dangerous, give it social consequences, like, I mean exactly that. Like, you cannot excuse the instances of bigotry you are seeing in your life. And every time you see it and excuse it, you are perpetuating it.
You will be fined $500 for every racist slur.
I wish people would stop being racist so quickly. But, like, we don't do that. And that's not even just, like, in a personal, like one-on-one situation. That is like nationally, like make institutions of racism pay for that. Give it like institutional and societal consequences. Like you should be afraid to say what you're going to say if it's going to hurt someone. Like, I don't get it.
I've been reading a book about hope, written by Jane Goodall. Yes, that Jane Goodall. She writes, quote, "Hope is often misunderstood. People tend to think it is simply passive, wishful thinking. This is indeed the opposite of real hope, which requires action and engagement. And why would you bother to take action if you did not truly hope that it would make a difference?" Unquote. If Jane's right, then none of the pillars in the Homegoings house, built of Black grief, rage, joy, and healing, exist without hope. Active hope has always been essential to Black survival. But I had to ask the group, does hope feel functional right now for Black youth? What reasons remain to be hopeful, if we even should?
Our hope is to make sure our voices are being heard by everybody, and what we say is being considered.
I feel like it's hard to hope. It is hard to hope.
We've never been awarded like joy and hope and imagination in our past.
They should put it into use. What we say.
When you don't keep going at something, it eventually disappears.
And when you're never given that image of like what the potential you have is and what you can do, it's hard to believe in that.
I feel like eventually there will be justice. It'll just take time, but we need to keep going at it. And if we don't, who will?
I have hope because I have to, but also hope is not necessarily the thing that most motivates me. Hope isn't really a plan.
If we stop now, nothing's going to keep it going.
Here in Vermont, we should be living a very free life. Here in Vermont, we should be living a very free life. We should be living a very free life.
What you're about to hear is the title song for the Listen Up Project, and it's a good reminder for all of us that when it comes to young folks, maybe we just have to listen. So let's do that now. Settle in and
listen up.
Listen up.
Listen up.
I'm so sick of a history that glorifies colonizers, liars, and thieves, that teaches that success needs control and greed. I shouldn't have to be nice to get you to agree. To hell with respectability. I'm not here for you, but for prosperity. To bask in this black, miraculous and holy. It's magic, fantastic, bear witness to me, cause this is my reckoning. My body is defiant and it's wrestling. The skin is my birthright. The struggle is the same. My protest is to smile, despite all the pain. So I'll be happy, the way my mama taught me. And I'll keep fighting to undo these racist policies. And I'll believe in better things, even if it's naive. Cause this is Black excellence, it's what we need. See, as collective, typical, I am an individual. You see the same in visual. I have a different ritual. Celebrate us, elevate trust. Rise above the system, freedom is a must. Celebrate us, elevate trust. Rise above, rise above.
Oh yes, I know I wasn't born here, but I equally deserve to be treated like anyone else. Being Black is not my fault, and will never be my fault. Therefore, treat me like I'm your own. I may sound different from the tone of my voice. All I need is just for you to listen. Maybe the pain within me will disappear.
Bobby Hackney Jr., Ravon Calderon, Naomi Fitzpatrick, Faith Awoto, and Don Kiputa. Thank you once again for trusting me with your stories. It's now been 3 years since our time together, and so much has changed. And sadly, so much hasn't. Maybe sometime we can get together and chat about it. Thank you also to Angela Evansy, Josh Crane, and May Naguski, my Brave Little State team, who helped me start this Brave Little series that I launched into a big, brave podcast that we now call Homegoings. I've been so emotional making this and looking back at our time together. What a time we shared. And thank you so much for listening to Homegoings. It's been a pleasure being here with you. This episode was mixed by our associate producer, James Stewart. I reported this episode and composed our theme music. Other music by Ruff Francis, Ravon Calderon, The Listen Up Project, and Blue Dot Sessions. I was the editor on this episode, and Elodie Reed is the graphic artist behind our Homegoings artist portrait. A collage of each of the musicians you heard from today is front and center, so you should check it out, as well as all of Elodie's portraits at homegoings.co. See you in 2 weeks for our final episode of Season 2, where a certain election is on the brain. If you have thoughts, reflections, or asks of me as your host about who we should talk to or what we should explore next on the show, write to me at hey@homegoings.co. As always, you are welcome here.
I have a different ritual. Celebrate us, elevate trust, rise above the system, freedom is a must.
The candidates for November are set.
I know Donald Trump's type.
Between now and Election Day,
We are not going back.
a campaign season unfolding faster
Kamala Harris is not getting a promotion.
than any in recent history.
Make America great again.
Follow it all with new episodes every weekday on the NPR Politics Podcast.